Hello to Leaping Dodo. Hello to Joey. Hello to Cauliflower Enjoyer. I hope you're enjoying your cauliflowers. And Jamie Cork. Oi, oi, it's happening. I want to do another sound test now. How's this? Did you hear those effects? Did that come through? Or does it sound like I'm just being a muppet? The future. We're here to talk about the future. A little bit in the distance, but it's audible. That'll do. Let's play with that then. I wonder if I'm too close to the mic compared to the speakers. In fact, the microphone's facing away from the speakers, so I'm sure I can hear that more than you can. But let's go. I wanted to talk about my idea. That sounds really cool where I am, but maybe it doesn't sound that great through the stream. I don't know. I'm going to probably regret this later on the playback. If you use OBS, yeah, but I'm not using OBS. Yeah, but I just want to talk today. I'm not really doing a big DAW thing. I just set this up for the hell of it. Why not? Stick that through there as well. We got 4 people. It was like 11 people before. I feel like, come on, man. Lost everybody because I had like, you know, when you set up the stream, it puts out the message and gives people a countdown or whatever. I just lost everybody by not having any sound. Everything sounds 1.5K-ish. Is that good? It's probably not good, is it? Sounds great now. Cool. Yeah, I think you're right, Leaping Dodo. Give me a moment. We will get interesting soon. Just gonna get used to it, get warmed up. This is what I do when no one's around. Messing around with sounds. This is the future. We're here to talk about the future. Woo. Sounds like the intro to like a late 90s drum and bass track. Hello, young Hewitt, NT Media model changer. Sounds like an anime character doing telecommunications. Who can tell what I'm actually doing, though? How am I making these sounds? Who knows? Does anyone know? Do you know? Do you know what I'm doing? Do you know what I'm doing? Tasty. Oh. Frequency shifting, that's right. But loads of producers use vocoders for effects in jungle tracks. No, it's not tape delay. It's all digital. I've finally lost it, G. Did I ever have it? Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. That's a bit dirty. Messy. Oh. Ow. Yeah. I'm enjoying this far too much, really. This is what I mean. I just love messing around with sounds, experimenting. There's so many cool little effects. Yeah, like little in-between noises. Oh, no. Make it stop. Make it happen. Whoa. 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 Wee. I love the simplicity of it. I love how easy it is. Well, I'm going to stop messing around with that. Otherwise, this is going to be the most boring stream ever. What are you doing to the shifting? No, all it is frequency shifter, which is the free Melder frequency shifter with a bit of feedback, because it does like a delay and feedback thing. As long as the frequency is not on 0, you get those kind of effects. I think you misread. I asked what you used. Yeah, that's what I used. I'm using the Melder M Freak Shifter. That's the plugin. You ever use your voice to control an FM synth? Can't say I have. I don't know. Right. I wanted to talk about the ideas for the private community that I talked about in my last video. And might be a chance for you guys to ask questions and for us to interact with each other, so that because I looked at the comments on that video, and there's a lot of people who seem to be interested in the concepts of a community, but I'm not sure that everyone quite understood what I mean, like what I've got in my mind. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good idea to sort of explain that more clearly. And if you have questions, ask away. I'll watch the chat. I'm not the fastest reader, so I might miss bits. Just, I don't know. Let's see how we get on. But basically my idea, it comes from the idea of having a mastermind group where you have a group of people who they all have a common goal. And in this case, it's about, well, let me talk about my goal first of all. So the reason why I like playing around with frequency shifters when no one's looking and things like that is because I learn, and I learn just by playing often. I mean, sometimes I have specific questions in my head, like what would happen if you, I don't know, it's hard to think of an example off the top of my head, but you get the idea. It would be like, what if we do things in an unconventional way, or what if we abuse a process, do something that's not supposed to be done? And then those questions lead to learning. So I just sort of experiment with things. And I've always thought, well, wouldn't it be great if there were other people to include into that process? So for example, if I had a question about, I don't know, multi-band crossovers, that was one I had a few years ago. So I wondered, if you have say a multi-band compressor, and the crossover filters are 3 decibels per octave each way. If you stack 2 of those multi-band compressors on top of each other, so you've got one in slot 1, you've got the next one in slot 2, and they both have 3 decibels crossovers, and they're at the same frequency, those crossovers, does it make the same artifacts as a 6 decibel if you were just to have one compressor, multi-band compressor, with a 6 decibel crossover filter? And the answer is yes. And then that obviously leads to, well, what can we do with that information? Does that mean, because I like those artifacts sometimes, and I want to avoid them sometimes. If I like them, I know that I can stack those artifacts over multiple stages. And if I don't like them, I know that I can avoid them by shifting those frequencies. So if I've got 3 decibels on one and 3 decibels on another, if I make sure that those aren't the same frequency, then I won't get the same artifacts as if they were bang on the same. Maybe I'm going a little bit too quick here, a little bit abstract, but obviously doing something like this, it would have to be done at a pace that is, everybody understands what the subject is and would go over the basics and yada, yada, yada. And speaking of basics, someone was asking about proper pianos. Well, that kind of thing maybe could go in the. So that's a good point. So what I'm thinking with this membership, it would be like a membership site, and in there I would like exclusive training material. So that would be like courses. By the way, I have a couple of courses in development. Some of you might know about one of them. I don't think I've ever mentioned the other one in public. So the one that you might know about is Stereo School, which that's very nearly complete. It's taken me a while, actually. But the idea is to be able to take the average Joe and turn him into a stereo god. And I'll tell you, it was very difficult putting that together because it's the concepts with stereo. First of all, they're very poorly understood. And second of all, there's a good reason why they're very poorly understood, because they're very difficult to explain. Some of it is like maths and physics, and some of it is like psychoacoustics. It's like how it works, how your brain processes the sound, the 2 inputs, and creates the sound stage in your mind. So yeah, there's a lot of complex concepts to cover, but at the same time, my goal is to simplify everything and make it, dead simple, so that anybody could pick it up and run with it, and so that anyone could say, right, here's the stereo image that I want, or the stereo style, or the stereo. The term I use in the course is stereo aesthetic. So here's the stereo aesthetic that I like, meaning kind of the tone of it, the flavor of it, the feel of it. And everyone might have a different idea of what kind of stereo aesthetic they like. So, for example, some producers recommend that you mono low frequencies and you get wider as you go higher up the frequency spectrum. I certainly used to do that. I don't like that anymore. I like doing the opposite, where you're wider in the low frequencies to a point. I mean, I'm generalizing, okay, and you have less stereo width in the high frequencies, because what that does is it makes the actual stereo field a bit warmer. Low mids for great for width. Yeah. So that's basically the kind of aesthetic that I'm talking about, where there's more focus on the low mids than the high mids in the stereo field. Anyway, this is a tangent. The point is, yes, I've got that Stereo School in development. I've been working on it for a while. It's very, very nearly complete. So that's the kind of thing I would put inside the membership site. So imagine if you sign up to the membership, you would have access to that course while you're inside the membership. The other course is, I might change the name actually, but I've called it the Clear Mix Method. And really it's a bit of a controversial subject now, but getting your mixes super loud, like extra loud. And I know that a lot of people say, oh no, don't make it too loud, then it's going to be distorted. Well, that's why it's called the Clear Mix Method. It's not about distorting the hell out of everything and making it painful to listen to. It's quite the opposite. It's about finding the maximum level according to your tastes and getting the best sound that you can get, and sort of hitting those levels And it's not too scientific. It doesn't go into lots of measurements and readings and things. It's very, very simple, very, very straightforward to follow. But the idea is that it's a framework. That one's a little bit more particular because it's like a framework that course teaches, a framework for how you can. It's an approach. It's not the only approach, but it's an approach to making your mixes very loud and very clear, with clarity being the main focus. Clarity certainly being the number one priority. And in fact, the reason why I ended up doing the stereo school course is because I couldn't fit the stereo stuff into the clear mix method because there's way too much information. Otherwise I would, and I'd make it just one big mix down course, I suppose. But so those kinds of things I would like to put inside the membership. So you would have access to that. There could be access to sample products, for example, the proper pianos. There could be, and more things. There could be access to other resources. There could be MIDI files. It could be presets. But then the main thing that I'm thinking about is the whole purpose of signing up for the membership site is progress, basically. And so I would want everybody to have like milestones, and we would get on group coaching calls. So I would be addressing you on camera, sort of like this, with the group. And there's many things you can do with a group coaching call. So one thing would be, oh, sorry, my hay fever's affecting me. One sec. That's better. So yeah, one thing is on the group coaching calls, you can do hot seats. So for example, somebody could send me their project that they're struggling with, or that there's an issue with, or they have a question with. I could open that project for the whole group to see with a video stream and with high quality lossless audio. And I could break that down for the benefit of everybody in the group. Okay, PDJMDS is saying loudness is such a controversial subject now. High loss is sometimes a false economy. Absolutely it is, yeah. Depending on where you're sending it. Absolutely, yeah. I haven't got time to go into the nuances of the loudness argument right now. So please just take everything I said as being out of context, and you'll have to wait for the context on that. Hello, Paul. yeah, I'm not going to give you the context on that now because it's my thoughts on the loudness. The whole loudness thing is very complex. It's there's no one really that I agree with, apart from the guys who are actually producing really, really, really good sounding, really, really, really loud mixes. You probably know who those people are. I'm not going to start naming artists, but you get the idea. So yeah, my idea for the membership site would be the group coaching calls, hot seats with individual members on those coaching calls. So you could say, oh, I want to make this, I don't know, hardstyle lead or whatever it is that you're into, and then everybody in the group would see the principles and would discuss it. And sometimes there might be a question that it can go to the entire group and the whole group can kind of pitch in, but other times it would be I suppose most it would be me jumping straight in and giving my thoughts on something. And sometimes it might open up questions. So for example, there might be a question about, and again, it's difficult to think of an example off the top of my head. I suppose a false example is, I get the question a lot, should I have just one reverb or just two reverb plugins in my mix and use those reverbs on sends, or should I put inserts on individual channels for the reverbs? And that's the kind of thing that, in my opinion, requires testing, because both of those methods are in use and they produce potentially fantastic results. Really what you want to know is what kind of advantages are there in terms of workflow, in terms of the sonics, and that's how you can learn to make the appropriate decision for you at that particular time. Thank you, Alice. Is that Alessandro? I'm not very good with reading names. Is it Alessandro? Or is it I don't know how to pronounce. So I'm just going to pretend. I shouldn't even mention it. I should just say, yeah. Hi, person. Great to see you back. Yes, thank you. Right. So just to recap, I've had the idea of doing a private membership site, and it's just an idea at the moment. It is still fuzzy. I don't have all of the details worked out, partly because I'm not even sure exactly which platform I would use. And I certainly don't have all of the content ready. For example, I said I would like to have some courses in there. For example, a stereo course, stereo school that I've almost completed, and the Clear Mix method, which is my course on making things louder, but especially with a focus on clarity. It's a mix down course essentially. And also it could be other products such as sample sets and all those kinds of resources, and we would build on those things and perhaps even together. So I could set assignments, which would be optional, I suppose, because if I set an assignment because certain people have let's say 30% of the people are struggling with one particular issue, it would be nice to address that issue and give those people an assignment. But you get what I'm saying. So it's similar to the tailored training that I do, which is a one-on-one service, but it's like sharing everything. So you're sharing the time with me on the coaching call, and obviously sharing the cost. So and we're all having an input on each other's as much as you want anyway. So I'm not going to be like forcing people, right, you're a member, you've got to talk to him now and tell him how to do the kicks the way you do it, because obviously some people don't feel comfortable with that, but I do. So that's the whole idea. I would be spearheading it and driving it. That's pretty much my idea. And I imagine, so I would want it very, very much focused on progress. So to me, that means there has to be clear milestones. So when you join, you should have some kind of assessment or self-assessment. It doesn't necessarily need to be public. And during that assessment, you figure out kind of how you're going to chart your way from where you are to where you want to be. From where you are to where you want to be. And of course, that's a very personal thing. It doesn't mean, everybody must learn this synthesis technique and everybody must learn this mix down technique and this side chain technique and this vocal technique. Because you might not use side chaining, you might not use vocals, you might not use synthesis. Obviously, everybody's way is different. And I think that's another benefit of this, is we can learn from each other, because one of the biggest things for me and one of the biggest breakthroughs, I would say, in my own learning personally, is that when I looked outside of the few genres that I started with, which was like jungle and hardcore and drum and bass and a little bit of garage, when I expanded past that and went into trance and hard trance and more house music and different types of house music, there was electro house and then dubstep and grime. That's when I started to learn techniques and learn ideas and learn concepts that were certainly applicable to the genres that I'd been doing, but because they were somewhat less applicable, I hadn't focused on those areas until I did other genres. And then when I focused on those areas doing those other genres, I brought that knowledge back to the original genres and found that it was of huge, huge benefit. And I think there's something to be said for learning from other genres to make like a patchwork. What am I trying to say? Like, as an artist, if you are an artist and not just like an engineer, as an artist, you want to draw influences from different places. Do you understand what I'm saying? And patch them together to make your whole. And that's based on your taste. It can't really be based on anything else, in my opinion. So I think it's important to look outside of the genre or the scene that you're involved in or that you're aiming for, because that gives you an opportunity to bring something new to the table inside that scene, inside that genre. Because I'll tell you this as well, from working with a lot of what I've done is had DJs come here to my studio. They're sort of DJ types, especially sort of 10, 20 years ago, yeah, I've been doing it that long, especially 10, 20 years ago when less people were doing it themselves at home because the computers weren't as powerful for making music. I would have DJ types who they wanted tracks in order to promote themselves and push their DJ career, which is fair enough. And so they would come to me for assistance with doing the production process. But what I found with a lot of those DJs, not all of them, but a good proportion, a good percentage of them, some of them were what I call scenes, as in scene. Scenes, like someone from a town is a townie, someone who's like really, they're like almost inbred in their scene. So if they're into, I don't know, tech house, that person just lives and breathes tech house. And to them, the most important thing in the world is tech house, and all the tech house DJs and all the tech house labels and all the tech house events. That is their universe. That is their world. They not only don't know much outside of that, they're almost like repulsed. They repel anything that's outside of that. They reject it. They're like, ew, trance. We don't like trance. We like tech house. And if you were to say to them, "Oh, what do you think of this? I don't know, synth sound," they'd be like, "Oh, it sounds like a trance synth." We couldn't even consider that for a moment. But the funny thing is, then if that particular trance sound becomes popular in tech house 3 months down the line, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, there's this new sound. I can't believe it. It's amazing." Because they are so, what's the word? Like a horse. My words are failing me. Myopic. That's the word. They're myopic. They are like very, very narrowly focused on a particular scene. Oh, it's Daz F. Hello, Joey. Daz F. Have to go. Interested in this idea. Let me know if you've clarified. Let me know when you've clarified something you're thinking. I will, Daz. Nice to see you, by the way. Tom Taylor says, "Sounds so good. I'd love that." Hey, Alessandro, I got it right. Yes, hello. Progressive house plugs became popular in techno because of Bicep. Yeah. Also love. Oh, hi. So yeah, this is the thing that happens, and I've seen it over and over again. In fact, one story that remains in my mind. I remember when it was probably late 2000s when dubstep was really buzzing in London, and that's where I am. I live in London. And it was like the hot new sound, and everybody was talking about dubstep, but the sound of the dubstep was very different to kind of what people associate with dubstep now. It was all it sounded a lot like a very sparse, slow drum and bass-ish. That's a very lazy way to describe it. But anyway, I remember hearing some of those records and thinking, why don't they just put some nastier sounds in there and, make it a bit more like Tear Out Breaks, some Reese sounds and some mid-range sounds. I thought that might actually spice it up a little bit. And it wasn't long before that started happening. And I kind of kicked myself thinking, well, I could have done that, but I had that idea and then just never thought that that's what those people would go for. In fact, I even spoke to people and they were like, "No, that's not what dubstep's about. It's about subs, man." So I was like, "Oh, well, okay." And then the next thing I was thinking, these tunes, that some of them, I mean, they sound okay, but I wonder what it would be like with a nice big fat drum and bass type kick and snare, because that was what was popular in drum and bass in the late 2000s, and that hadn't migrated to dubstep yet. And I always thought, yeah, nice big snare. Oosh, oosh, oosh. I thought that's really going to work in dubstep, but I couldn't figure out why no one was doing it. And yeah, I even had a guy come to the studio to make a dubstep track, and I was slightly pushing it in that direction. But I was afraid. I was like, no, if we go too far, then it's going to sound weird and people won't like it, which was a big mistake, because it was like 6 months later, a year later, everybody was doing it. And they weren't even that great at it. That I could have done it better because I'd learned that skill from doing drum and bass. So yeah, but do you understand the concept of what I'm saying? When you learn from other genres, you open up a world of opportunity and possibility. And I've noticed that again from working with a lot of producers, some successful, some not so successful. And in fact, let me just be very specific about what I mean there. When I say successful, I mean in terms of being productive and being capable. That's what I mean by successful. When I say unsuccessful, I don't necessarily mean in the career business sense. It might just mean that they really struggle to achieve what they want, they're not very productive. They're not very prolific. And one of the things I've noticed is that the unsuccessful ones tend to be very, very narrowly focused. They're very, myopic is the word I would use. Like they have this very strict, slim idea in their head of what they want to do and how they want to do it, and only that way, what they have in their head is the way that it will work. And they're limiting themselves needlessly. Whereas the ones that tend to be very, very successful with it, they cast a much broader. I'm mixing my metaphors. They cast a wider net for pulling in influences. So, and those influences might seem like they shouldn't go together. So, that's one of the things. So, for example, do I want to make examples? Probably not. I don't really like talking about artists. It's something about that. Just, it's not on a live stream. I don't want to name names. You know what I'm saying? But there are examples of artists who you would take from one genre that doesn't necessarily sound like it belongs in the other, and they kind of fuse those together. And sometimes it's done in a very obvious way. Other times it's not done in an obvious way at all. And we might be talking about something very small, like a hi-hat technique, or a particular way of doing the timing, like it might be in triplets, or it might be a loose timing groove like a hip hop thing instead of a tight timing groove like an old school house thing. So huge opportunity when you speak to and learn from producers from different backgrounds, from different cultures. That reminds me, actually, I don't really want to talk about that on stream. I need to censor myself better, because sometimes I just start talking, and then while I'm talking, I start thinking and then realize, let's roll that back. Okay. I'm going to read some of the comments. It's garage for stoners. It's what we call deep dubstep, UK dubstep now at this point. Yeah, and I like it. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't meaning to slag it off by any stretch. It's just, I just had ideas, and I feel that way now. In fact, I feel that way about hip hop, and I felt that way about hip hop for a long time, which is that I've thought they could learn more from the dance world, and they have actually been embracing more and more from the dance world, but I still think there's far more. There's way more scope there that they just haven't cottoned onto, or I don't know. It feels like an open goal. It feels like a huge opportunity, and it just isn't being taken. But I think one of the worst things you can do if you want to get stuck is just be very narrow in terms of what you're trying to do, especially as you work on a particular sound, you work in a particular scene, and then the whole scene moves on and goes to a different sound, and sometimes that leaves a producer behind. But if you can develop your own sound and your own voice within that scene, then that's much better. To recap, have this idea to get a bunch of badass, well, at least ambitious producers together and have us on a membership basis. So it would be like a monthly fee. That's another thing. I think some of people in the comments weren't clear on the idea. This isn't like a what would you call it? Like a free Discord server or something. And I know people have charged for Discord servers access. That's not my vibe at all. I promise you, there's way, way, way better tech solutions for this kind of thing, where they are set up for membership sites. They're like membership portal solutions where they allow you to jump on regular coaching calls. They allow you to do spontaneous just jumping on a call when the leader feels like it. So there's many advantages to that. And obviously doing the tiers and doing the progress and everything like that, I mean, that's very difficult to do if you have to do it manually, or if you have to string together different bits of technology to build the jigsaw this idea together. So I would rather use a dedicated tool that's specific for this kind of community. And yes, the idea is to push everybody to achieve. And if someone comes and says, look, I've been feeling really, really uninspired, I've been feeling really down this week or this in the last couple of days since we last spoke or whatever, it would be nice to go to the group and say, has somebody else got a suggestion, or I have some suggestions, and I would open up a discussion and everybody could sort of jump in. Sometimes, in my opinion, what people need, not necessarily what they realize they need, but sometimes they do. Sometimes what you need is just someone to listen and to understand and to support you and to say, yeah, keep going. Like, you do go through the dark times sometimes. In fact, I get this all the time with the people that I train, because all of them are really like gung-ho. You know what I mean? They have big aspirations. And sometimes they're just really hard on themselves. And I've had people come to me and say, man, I just did really badly on the assignment you set me, and I feel like a flipping loser right now because it sounds like rubbish. I didn't hit the target. And I'll listen to it and I'll be like, well, I think it sounds all right. Number one, I think you did better than you give yourself credit for. And if we look back 2-3 weeks, you couldn't have done that, what you've done. So look at the progress you've made. And they were like, oh yeah, actually, you're right. So yeah, sometimes we need that. And the other thing is, like, I know this, like, if I'm struggling with something, and I do, but I'll tell you why though. I should make this clear because I don't want to sound like I'm like underconfident or whatever. I'm very confident. I struggle with things because I look for things to struggle with, because I enjoy the struggle, because I enjoy the not gratitude. What's the word? Well, the gratification. Yeah, that's the word. I enjoy the gratification of overcoming those struggles. So I'm always looking for ways to stretch myself, because I kind of get bored otherwise. Because I'm so used to struggling that even though I don't need to struggle, I do. So like if I was saying this to someone in the comments on one of the videos earlier on today. It's like, if I have to get something done, I know the reliable path to do everything workflow wise, creativity wise. I know how to get the job done, get it done well, get it done efficiently. But that kind of bores me at this stage. And that's just how weird I am. This is why I'm obsessed with music production and learning. I'm like, I suppose I'll tell you what it's like. If you were like a gym bro and just always doing weights and stuff, you wouldn't want to maintain. You know what I mean? I mean, so, I suppose some people do have that attitude of there's a certain level they want to get to and stay at. But with music, that makes no sense to me. I don't want to get to a certain level and stay there. I want to continuously push further and further and further and further. Because, I remember being bad, really bad, like awful. I couldn't, do I want to talk about dates when it was? Yeah, like 1995. Was that 95? Yeah, 1995. I remember being sat in front of the keyboard. Yeah, it sounded worse than that. I remember being sat in front of the keyboard and I had a CD, yeah, because it was CD days. It was Baby D. I Need Your Loving. And I was trying to work out the piano notes and I couldn't work it out for the life of me. And it was really winding me up because it just seemed so simple. Like I could hum along and I can hum a note and then play that same note on the keyboard, yet I couldn't figure out the note. And I was trying to draw it in as a MIDI sequence so that I could, copy it and recreate it. Because I thought that a good way to learn would be to recreate that record. Or at least try in MIDI. And I just couldn't do it. I was nowhere close to being able to do it. It was the most frustrating thing in the world. Absolutely. And in fact, a few years after that, so that was 95. A few years after that, the thing that really got me was mixdowns. Because I could like pick all my favorite samples and everything. That's easy. I understood what drum machines were popular and that kind of thing. And I had a pretty decent sample collection. But then I would put this monster together and it just sounded, sloppy and muddy. And I mean, I don't need to tell you. But I'm laughing at the comments. That frustration is something that I grew to love. Because every time you overcome something like that, it's like, well, For me anyway, I feel really good about it. And in fact, the more I do it, the harder it gets to find ways to do it, but the bigger the payoff is because I have to do something even more difficult, even more difficult, even more difficult. That's why I'm like making the donk sound. I'm not going to make donk music. I'm not not to diss that music, but it's not really my vibe. Someone even said that in the comments. It's like, well, didn't you tell me? He said, didn't you tell me you wouldn't do donk music if I wanted to come to your studio a few years ago? And I said, yeah, I did say that because, you know, if I have someone in the studio, I want to enjoy myself and I want to enjoy the music. And again, I'm not dissing that music. Right? There are some decent tunes in that music or whatever, but I wouldn't want to be stuck 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours working on something that I really, really don't like. That's something that I would avoid like the plague. I want to be really into what I'm working on. I want to be really, really sure I'm going to be really into it. So if there's a high risk that I'm not going to enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. But no, I think the risk is lower now that I've figured out that sound. Anyway, what I was saying is I was challenged to make that donk sound, and I love the sound itself. I absolutely love it. Really difficult to recreate. Really, really difficult. And in fact, this brings up another point about my philosophy, I suppose. So when something is difficult for me, in fact, let's do a contrast. When things were difficult for me before, if I was making a donk sound, I'd be like, okay, I've got the basic sound. Now I probably need to EQ it. Oh, now I probably need to compress it. Oh, now I probably need to put some reverb on. Oh, now I probably need to modulate the oscillator. Oh, now I probably need to automate the level and now automate the EQ. And the more you're trying to chase the sound, the more you're kind of adding layers and levels and complexity. You're inching closer and closer and closer to the result that you want. That is a bad process, okay? It kind of can sometimes work. It's very laborious, it's very painful, and the payoff is not that good. Like I've found that those are the times where when you finally get to where you're going and you've pushed it as far as you can push it, you're like, like it's okay, but it doesn't sound really quite how I had in my mind. What I find tends to be the better solutions are the solutions where you've found the simplest way to do it. So I want to simplify. So if I've got the sound and it doesn't sound quite right, I'm looking for, well, what steps did I take wrong and how could I go back through the process and fix those points so that later on in the process I don't have that issue. Hope that makes sense. Okay, anyway. So yeah, I look for simple solutions. Well, I have some notes as well, because as I said in my previous video, I had this idea of doing what I called the Music Production Acceleration Group. And I was going to launch that in 2019 before whirlwind life events, we'll say, when I became a single dad. So that I just wasn't able to, because I had to cut down my work hours and all the rest of it. But I had this idea and I took loads and loads of notes. So I'm going to reference those notes now, because this is basically what I'm thinking for this private community. So you want to make extraordinary and exceptional music that brings people together, enriching their lives and yours, right? That's the basic premise of it. You have all the software you need, but the chances are your music needs to be much more powerful. You know what I'm talking about. So I would say these days especially, there's a focus on tools. There's a focus on plugins and gear and kit. And sometimes it's like really, it gets to the point of fetishization. I mean, I say to people, do you really need 30 different compressor plugins? Think about that now. Think about it. How many actual compressors do you even need in your mix? Are you going to use all 30? So you're going to use a different compressor on every track that you have compression on? Or is this just a case of you're going to have 30 compressors and then your brain is going to work through those 30 different compressors when you're going to pick one, and you're going to try and guess which one's the best one? Or are you going to try 30 compressors every time you're going to go and give me a break? Give me a break. That's not good for workflow. That's not good for process, and it's not good for sound either. But that's a bit of a more complex argument. Let's park that one. But what I'm saying is, I suppose what am I saying? Even the basic tools that come with your DAW, I've looked at all of them, you know, Bitwig, Cubase, Live, Logic, Ableton. I said Ableton. You get what I'm saying. Even Renoise, Reaper, Cakewalk, what do they call that now? The BandLab, Cakewalk. You know what I'm talking about. All those things, they all come with a very, very, very decent set of base plugins, foundation plugins. Okay, there's a few things that are very specialized, special case plugins, like, I don't know, like Soothe, for example. I know a lot of people use Soothe. I don't personally use it. I have other tools that do similar things, but you get the idea. You might not have that within your base set. But the very basic compression, EQ, reverb, I'm telling you now, you can get by with, if not just the raw basic plugins that come in your DAW, then you can get by with those plus freebies. And I'm not saying you necessarily should. I'm just saying you could. And why that's important is because I think people get very caught up in, I can't get my vocals to sound good. I better get a new EQ. And I'm here to tell you, sorry, bucko, if you can't get your vocal to sound good with your current EQ, I don't think that the new EQ is necessarily going to get you there. It might help, but it's probably not going to push you over the edge because you have an issue with skill, not an issue with kit. No one's got an issue with kit anymore. There's only an issue with skill, and you can use kit a little bit to cover up the skill gap, or bridge the skill gap, I should say. But anyway, let me get back to my notes. So if you want your music to be more powerful, I mean, you might want it loud, you might want it clear, you might want it very kind to the ears, you might want it to have lots of impact emotionally and physically when played on a big sound system. Ideally, it should make crowds dance. I think we can pretty much all agree on that. And perhaps you want it to be fresh, yet authentic, catchy, but credible. Basically, you know how you want your music to sound. But if you ever wondered, what would it take to make this happen reliably, efficiently, and enjoyably, so you can stand out from the pack and accomplish everything you want to with your music? So this was the idea for, what did I call it? Music Production Acceleration Group. Because I know sometimes making powerful music can seem impossible, but I'm about to reveal how it is possible. Because the thing is, it's not your fault, right? So the answers to those questions won't be found in the places you'd reasonably think to look. So I said about kit. You know, I've seen guys waste thousands upon thousands on plugins and kit, only to be outdone by teenagers with laptops and headphones, right? That's embarrassing. In fact, that happened to me. I don't even want to talk about that, but years ago, obviously, like over a decade ago, when I was like really working hard on trying to find all the best plugins and everything, and then there were these guys who were just using stock plugins and laptops and headphones. I'm like, why are they beating me? Why are they getting a better sound than me? This doesn't seem fair. Okay, it's not even about the time or effort devoted to each track, because everyone eventually tries that, but nearly nobody succeeds. And most people, or many people at least, confess that their finest tracks were often those that took the least amount of work. And again, how can I put this? If I am in the same room as a producer who I have some passing interest in, I will interrogate the hell out of them. I do their heads in. For example, I mean, even DJ Vibes, I've worked a lot with DJ Vibes. And when I first met him, I was like, what sampler did you use? What keyboards did you use? Do you remember an effect unit that had like a little blue strip on it? I would just ask him all these questions. And he was like, whoa. Like, number one, I don't remember. Number two, I don't know some of the answers to those questions. And number three, why are you so intense about it? But I'm trying to pick up bits of information, and I would say, well, how long did it take to do the mix down, and how long did it take to get your ideas down, and did you bring the record with you, or did you bring that sample in at a later date? You know, I'd be asking all of those questions because I'm interested in the processes that lead to the results. And yet there's been some massive producers that I've fortunately had the opportunity to speak with, and it's like a reoccurring theme. I'll say to them, how did you do that track, your biggest track? And they'll say, I don't know, it just came together. I hardly tried. We didn't even know it was going to be a hit. They all say it. It's like the fastest ones, the easiest ones tend to be the best ones. And it isn't technical know-how. Now, if you watch enough interviews and masterclasses with pros, you'll come to realize that actually very few of them are highly tech savvy. I mean, I suppose all of them have some tech savvy, but none of them are like, well, very, very few of them are like super, super tech savvy. Sometimes you see more tech savvy people like on forums talking about, oh yes, but the curvature on the compression knee at a certain ratio, if you adjust it to the second millisecond and blah blah blah, they'll go into extreme detail and they'll be drawing out graphs and showing you like white papers from Japan and stuff, and they'll be like, yeah, they can talk shop, but then you listen to their SoundCloud, it doesn't necessarily lead. So it's not about technical know-how necessarily. So what is it then? I used to think it came down to a natural born talent. And obviously I didn't have it because I wasn't getting the results. My piano teacher saw me as a lost cause. I didn't even reach grade 1 with piano. I mean, I can play piano, but not because of my piano teacher. My guitar teacher asked my parents to stop sending me to lessons. That's true. Besides that, my earliest productions had sloppy timing, parts out of key, and an overall muffled sound. So whenever I crossed paths with a seasoned pro, the way they talked regarding music, it made it painfully clear that they were listening to all kinds of details I couldn't even hear. Do you know, have you ever been in a room and they're like, oh yes, I really like 12K on that transient, and you're thinking, what are you talking about? I can't even hear that. They'll be pointing it out and you'd be like, what is he talking? I remember them being at a trade show and they were showing off this gear and they were talking about, oh, these colors. Oh, we're getting all these colors out of this saturation or whatever it is. And everyone in the crowd's like, oh, yeah, the colors. Oh, I can really hear the colors. I'm thinking, how can you hear color? What are you guys talking about? Well, how can I? It sounds the same to me, like the before and after. I can't tell the difference. I think that's a very common experience, and most people probably were like are like internally they're probably thinking what colors, but they don't want to look silly, so they're like, yeah, I can hear the colors too. You can hear the colors. Yeah, of course I can hear the colors. Steve, can you hear the colors? Yeah, of course. Yeah, the colors all day. Beautiful colors. Anyway, so it seemed like pros were listening and hearing details that I couldn't even hear, and although I struggled to make anything half decent, I'd occasionally meet a smug overachiever who'd make it all look easy. You know, the types, they've got like loads of tunes and they make them really quickly and you think, or I would meet someone who'd been doing it far less time than I had. So I'd been working for 3-5 years trying to make my tune sound good. And I've met someone who says, oh yeah, hear my tune. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. How long have you been doing it? They'll be like 6 months. You're like, oh, 6 months. Okay. Of course, hours of practice did help a lot in some areas. But after years of going nowhere fast, I finally had to face reality, because at such a snail's pace, it might take me more time than I have left on the planet to get up to scratch. And I said, life is too short. So I took advice from my dad, who is a music lover, a problem solver. He's a computer programmer by trade, or he was. And he said, oh, should I do a silly voice? He said, son, the average musician is lucky to have 1, maybe 2 good songs their whole career. Then everything else they make is utter dross. But somehow, the true greats keep coming back with incredible music, year after year, decade after decade. That's no accident. They have better methods. Their whole process is superior. So unless you're okay with being at the mercy of potluck, you must find the winning processes. I was like, thanks, Dad, but that means practice doesn't make perfect. I mean, if you practice bad processes, you reinforce bad habits. I mean, you can try to search online for the best methods, but damn, I mean, they call it the information superhighway, but it's like, sometimes it's a vacuum for information. When you're really trying to find something specific, you end up with nothing. Do you know what I mean? There's endless information, but it's either too vague. It's like, here's my top piece of advice. Use compression on vocals. Great. What am I going to do with that? If I don't know how to use a compressor, or I don't know when the vocal needs it or whatever, that's a useless piece of advice. Or it's oddly specific, like detune the saw by 23 cents and then take the cutoff to 12 o'clock. It's like, well, you're not teaching someone synthesis. You're teaching someone to follow your steps. It's the equivalent of saying how to cook by move your hand up a little bit and to the left. Now lower the pan onto the cooker. It's like, come on, that's not teaching someone to do something for themselves. What I always wanted to see offered was a thought process behind each stage, right? Because I don't like the idea of pushing tools over skills. Shiny new plugins are no substitute for improving your technique. It's the equivalent of buying better boxing gloves instead of figuring out how to land punches, right? The tools need to be adequate, of course, but they'll never make up for weak skills. And again, like if you were a boxer, you would want the best gloves, of course. But there's no point giving the best gloves to someone who doesn't know how to box and say, "There you go, that will help." Well, yeah, it helps, but it's not the solution, is it? Realistically, okay. And why don't the leaders of each genre share their processes? Either they're too busy making music, touring the world, or they're afraid of giving away any methods that might give them an edge over the competition. And here's the kicker. Most of them aren't fully aware of their processes anyway. So even if they're willing to share, they're unable to. Why? Well, because nearly all of them are self-taught, right? And they develop their methods through trial and error, not through a clear understanding that they're able to put into words. You've noticed that if you've listened to interviews and read interviews, watched masterclass videos. Then there's schools and courses offering vague skills like how to use EQ or mixing and mastering, but they never dare to mention specific juicy results like how to get your masters as loud and as clear as the very best in your chosen genre, because they know they can't deliver on those promises. You see what I'm saying? What they do deliver is yet more of the weak, boring drivel you've already seen elsewhere. You could read it on Wikipedia, you could Google it, you could see it on Reddit or in the Discord server or whatever. Anyway, I tried all of those things, but it was never enough. Yet, despite all the obstacles, you're expected to teach yourself to be a composer, a writer, a performer, a programmer, a producer, a sound designer, a mix engineer, and a mastering engineer. And again, life's too short. And with every day that passes, the goalposts drift steadily further and further away. As music evolves and production standards keep on rising, it gets increasingly difficult to keep up. The gap between the super successful and the utterly hopeless grows ever wider. So it's no wonder that most people end up feeling uninspired and demotivated. But don't worry, there's a good reason to stay hopeful. What if I were to tell you that there's a much easier way than ever before? How would you like to make music equipped with the simplest possible methods to get world-class results every single time? Imagine having an elite team working around the clock on your behalf, researching and developing cutting-edge techniques just to be able to hand you the quickest and easiest path to get you where you want to be with generating musical ideas, MIDI programming, audio editing, sound choice, sound design, and of course, that final, polished, big, beautiful, wide, deep, sweet, professional mix and master. Allow me to introduce to you a totally new concept. So this was what was supposed to be Music Production Acceleration Group. I'm not sure about the name anymore. But in simple terms, it's monthly membership coaching for a super select group of music makers pursuing the very highest standards of excellence. And it's so much more as well as that. As a member, you'll be privy to regular coaching sessions hosted live by myself, accessed through a standard web browser. That's the idea anyway. Again, I'd just say I'm not 100% sure on the tech, what tech I would use. And each session would be carefully designed to focus on a specific set of topics around how to make the best possible sounding music with the easiest possible way, the easiest possible methods. Skills over tools. Say it with me. Skills over tools. Every session would be part theory lesson, part practical demonstration, part Q&A, and part laboratory for testing and uncovering best practices. You see, the way I overcame the information vacuum, the lack of information, was to follow no one, to reject all assumptions, and to painstakingly test everything meticulously and methodically, which I still do to this day. I also obsessively study the most powerful tracks around, dissecting them to uncover exactly what makes them tick. However, I'm not recommending you do the same because life is too short. Instead, if you join me in this community, you'll get unprecedented access to all the findings of my grind. And that grind, so I started in 1994. That'll give you an idea. I have definitely way in excess of 30,000 hours on the job and sharpening my skills. You know, they say it takes 10,000 hours to reach genius level or expert level or whatever. I'm not sure that I buy that concept. I was nowhere near where I wanted to be after 10,000 hours. So either I'm an idiot or that concept doesn't really work. But yeah, I'm 30,000 plus hours deep, easily. And that's a deep obsession with the secrets of stunning detail and clarity, immersive 3D depth and space, state-of-the-art sound design, incredible bass, that elusive composition and the elusive smoothness and warmth, evocative composition and arrangement, vivacious energy, uncompromising loudness, and so much more, all distilled into just the essentials for easy, fast action results, no holds barred. And remember, that includes an open Q&A segment, so you can submit questions at any point during the presentation, and we can always clear up points of confusion. Just to clarify, I'm reading from some notes that I had about my plan for what was going to be Music Production Acceleration Group. That's the seed of the idea that I'm talking about. But in terms of technology, I mean, things have moved on since I had that idea, and I'm looking at new technology, new solutions to actually be able to deliver this now. So that, you know, some of it isn't one for one. And you'll be able to send in questions and topic requests ahead of the group coaching calls, so I can tailor the agenda to best serve you as part of the group. Plus, you'd get access to the replay footage from those coaching calls, which you can review whenever it suits you, as many times as you like, which is great news. If there's any reason you can't attend the session as it happens live, or if you just need a refresher. It's all about arming you with reliable, cutting-edge methods to make your music sound the way you want it to sound and feel the way you want it to feel, so you can finally go out and blow people's flipping heads off with your music. The secret to achieve this consistently is to piece together an assortment of sophisticated methods so you can design a minimum difficulty, maximum results workflow, one that's unique to your needs. I would say anything less than that is a complete waste of your time and energy. That's my opinion. So to help you on your journey, would give you fun and gratifying assignments to energize your learning and boost your skills between the coaching calls. That would include improving your perceptive listening skills. When you listen to learn, you learn to listen. And ultimately, you learn how to trust your ears, which is one of the keys to dramatically speeding up everything you do. By the way, you will need to set aside time sort of in between coaching calls to go through everything, and you will need to put in some effort. I have to clarify that point up front. I'm not saying, oh yeah, join the group and sit back and you're just going to like magically turn into the best producer in the world. Obviously, you're going to need to put some thought into it at least, you know what I mean, and practice some things. And it might be that something seems to make sense and then you try it and you come up with challenges that you weren't expecting. So we talk about that the next time we get onto a meeting. I'm not claiming I can magic away the learning curve, but if you join the private community, then I can save you from years and years and years of frustration and dread aches. With music that just doesn't stand up. And the real payoff comes when you play your impressive new music, witness the effect it has on people, and you realize just how many doors powerful music can open for you. And speaking of doors, this would be an opportunity for you to expand your network as well, because you'd be connecting with other like-minded members. And who knows where those hookups might lead? Collaborations, shared contacts. Other advantages of the format, the group format, include the speed and value of running group tests, so we can compare results and validate theories. I mean, for example, I've talked about low cut filters on my channel, and every time I do it, I lose subscribers, which I don't care about. And there's someone in the comments saying, yeah, but however, and giving me some theory. And oftentimes they're theories that are commonly spread theories. They are theories that sound sensible, that sound logical, that sound reasonable. They generally have a very large component of truth to them. But oftentimes they just don't stand up to scrutiny. You test those theories and you find there's flaws all over the place. And these people, they cannot understand why. I know you put the low cut filter on something, and you even though it seems like you're clearing up space for the bass sounds less clear and things like that. They have all these weird problems. They don't really know even where the problems are coming from. So yeah, that kind of thing is where I could say, right, we're all going to test the same thing. We'll all go away, we'll test it, and we'll come back and compare notes. And we could do brainstorming to tackle new challenges in order to stay at the very front, frontier of effective music making tactics. Which reminds me, someone was saying to me recently, in the gaming world, competitive gaming, and this includes sport as well, but they do like the esports and things. It's not my world, but someone was saying to me that there's this concept of, they call it the meta, META, which stands for the most effective tactic available. Now, to be competitive in that world, you need to find the most effective tactic available. And when someone comes along with the most effective tactic available, it's the most effective tactic available, because they're beating everybody with it. And this goes back to what I was saying, was the advice from my father, was that the ones who are winning and who have much, much better processes, I want to name names, but I don't think it's a good idea. But you know what I mean? There's like leaders of every scene where everyone looks up to that group or those few, or it might even be one producer, and they're like, how does he or how does she or how do they get that result? And everybody else would love to get that result. And I'm telling you, it's not because they're more talented. It's not because they're more skilled necessarily. I mean, yeah, it is a skill, but it might not be the skills you're thinking that it is. It's generally that they're using a very different method. They found a better way to do it. They found a method that's more effective. They found the most effective tactic available. So that's a concept I want to bring to this. This goes back to what I was saying in my other video about, well, I'll be having a conversation about gaming with someone and I'm thinking, how can this get me to make better sounding music? So yeah, there's that. And instead of being confined to a narrow genre, my approach is to embrace the whole spectrum of music. Sadly, most short-sighted genre fanboys tend to get lost in the inbred production dogma of their music style. In contrast with me, we'd be free to take a holistic approach so we can focus on innovation and quality no matter where we should find it. Because sometimes, it might even be a genre that most people don't like. And that's another interesting thing. You don't even have to like the style of music to learn from it. I found that because I have such an interest in music production, there's no real genres I don't like. There's plenty of tracks I don't like in any genre, but there's not really any genre that I specifically don't like that genre, like I would never listen to that genre. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, since every member has unique tastes, this way you're much more likely to pick up tricks from outside your main genre, which that could give you a serious advantage over the peers who aren't in our group, who aren't in the membership service. Which reminds me, I wouldn't be. I can't read that. Okay. Because remember, I'm referring to notes here. If you're wondering why I'm looking over here and changing my tone of speaking, it's because I'm reading bits and bobs from notes that I have from years ago about my idea for music production acceleration group. So I have not really properly been looking at the comments. I've tried to glance over, but I'm a very slow reader and that text is very small. But for now, if there's a question that I haven't answered, would you like to post it again? Or if you have a question at this point, would you like to post it? Thomas Adair says it's what works for them. I don't know what that was in reference to, but this is something that has changed. How can I say? Because I worked so much, especially like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, as an engineer, where I have people coming to me with their own ideas about how music should sound. I wouldn't want all of my studio artists to sound like me. So I felt that I had a very serious responsibility to make sure I make each artist that came to me for production work to make sure each one of them sounds unique, that they sound how they should sound, how they want to sound. You understand what I'm saying? And so, Unit, I see you. So I've always been interested in where is here's what I'm trying to say. If you're just a producer, you're after what is the quickest way to get the sound I want. But for me as an engineer, I have to think beyond that. I also have to think, how can I get the sound for that person? How can I get the sound for that? I need to be flexible. That was always my main goal, was to be as flexible as possible, as adaptable as possible, to be able to, to be able to accommodate different styles, different approaches, different takes. And that's how I've ended up pulling in, I suppose, a skill set that's a little bit beyond what the average producer who only does their sound would do. You understand what I'm saying? And most engineers who have done the kind of work that I've done in the past, I mean, I still do it, but I did it more then than I do now. Most of those engineers, I mean, a lot of them were quite lazy, and they did just have one kind of a sound, and every artist who went to them for that sound. That was something I always tried to avoid, because I before I could engineer, I was afraid to go to a studio and pay an engineer, because I thought they're going to mess up my sound. I know how I want my music to sound, and I don't trust anyone else to put their hands on my music. I want it to be done my way. Okay, blah, 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 blah. I'm just reading through these notes. If you want to skip years of dissatisfaction, you want to access the easiest, most cutting-edge methods and make your music as powerful and as effective as it can possibly be, so you can whiz past the competition and open the gates to a whole new world of opportunities through your music. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I think that's the end of the notes of what's relevant. Unit was asking about spectral resynthesis other than Halion 7. That's interesting. Halion 7 really caught my interest recently. Do I want to talk about this on live stream? No, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, Yes Hello's asking how to donk. I'll say that Steinberg's Halion 7, which came out in February, I think, or January, that's their new workstation. It's a little bit under the radar, because I think most people who aren't in the Cubase ecosystem, they don't really pay as much attention as they should to Steinberg's individual products. They're massively underrated company. Halion 7 is their flagship, their big workstation, and it's the new version. That was critical to my figuring out the donk. I'll say that. I didn't want to say that in public, because I'm thinking, someone might figure it out before me and not before, because I've already figured it out, but someone might put a video out before me, which is why when I understand Unit, which is why when Halion 7 came out, I was very quick in with my donk video, because I wanted to get my donk video out, the preview of the donk sound, to demonstrate that I had actually produced the sound, just in case someone got a tutorial in before me, but it's looking like no one's going to get the tutorial in. And people probably haven't realized that Halion 7 is special in that regard. Actually, I can get the sound without Halion 7 now, but I use it to help me figure out. So the question is about spectral resynthesis. Yeah, advanced spectral resynthesis. My favorite plugin for that is the other Steinberg product, PadShop 2. I've done some mad stuff with that. In fact, what's the other one? Backbone does spectral resynthesis, which is also by Steinberg. I think Steinberg are pretty cutting edge with the spectral resynthesis. I believe Alchemy inside Logic Pro does that as well. It certainly did when it was back in the Windows days. I used to love Camel Audio Alchemy. It was bought by Apple and integrated into Logic. So if you use Logic, there's that option. Okay, for Ableton, you can use the Steinberg plugins inside Ableton. That's allowed. They are released as AUs and VST3s. Yes, the Alchemy engine sucks in comparison. That's true. Obviously, there is the iZotope offering. I really don't want to go down the rabbit hole of talking about plugins. Yes, Harmor is a very, very good suggestion from Yes Hello. But my choice would be Backbone by Steinberg and PadShop 2 by Steinberg. But I'm not here to be bigging up, products. I don't want to be like a shill or I'm not sharing affiliate links and all that stuff. I don't like to do that. So I'm just answering that question because it caught my interest, because Halion 7 has been a bit of a game changer for me. It's in my top few plugins. But I'm going to wrap up the stream now. Now I've given you a little bit more of an idea of what I have in mind for the private community. It would be, as I say, a monthly thing. We'd get together, we'd talk shop at a very, very high level. By the way, if you're thinking that you might not be at that level yet, you might not be advanced enough. I don't know. I think, well, I have different thoughts about that, but probably now's not the time to get into it. But don't rule it out is all I'll say for now. Don't rule it out. But certainly, if you're thinking, I want the most advanced possible techniques. Yeah, okay, let me put it like this. Don't confuse quality of results with complexity of implementing those results. Oftentimes, those things are completely opposite. Like, when I see people struggling to get the sound that they want, very often I look at what they're doing and I'll say, you didn't need to do 75% of what you did and you could have got a better sound. You're putting way too much effort into this. You're overcomplicating it, and you're compromising your sound in several ways, like by adding layers of artifacts from the plugins and whatnot. And you would have just been better to find the simplest method. That's what I'm always going for, is the simplest method with the best sound. I've said that a few times on the stream, but that really, really is the essence of this. It's the crux of this. So it's not about making it harder and adding more steps to get a better, more sophisticated, advanced, competitive sound. It's the opposite. It's about making it simpler. It's about making it quicker. It's about making it easier. Unfortunately, the way that I've got to that is by trying all the difficult stuff. I've had a rough ride to get to the place where I have a very solid kind of philosophy about this thing that is flexible enough that I feel confident to teach other people to find themselves within that framework. Do you understand what I'm saying? I feel like I'm getting a little bit too abstract now, but I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you so much for coming down. I know there's been a lot of questions and there's been a lot of comments. I find it very difficult to keep up with the chat. This is my first time doing a live stream on video, I think, ever. I used to do a radio show, so I'm a little bit used to that. It reminds me of being, I did also like a Facebook Q&A for computer music, but that was all just typing. That was much simpler. But it's a similar feeling. I like this more because I can get my thoughts out quicker. There's a question, any chance you would get to doing any hardware tutorials? Probably. Well, I've considered it. I've thought about it. I do use hardware, and I think there's certain things that you can only do or that are better to do with hardware. Although they're things that are so specific, I would say, if you had a choice between only hardware and only software, I would say hands down, it's got to be only software. If you can mix a little bit of hardware in, you have to be very careful about which hardware you choose, but there might be some benefits there for sure. So yeah, I wouldn't rule out doing hardware tutorials, but again, I just don't like over-reliance on kit. I like skills over tools. And I'm going to leave it on that note. So thank you so much, guys, for coming down to the stream. I suppose it's been a little bit messy, but it's my first time, and I'm sometimes a little bit scatty with my thoughts. So I hope I got the ideas across clearly enough. Bless you. And I will be, I should talk about what's next, actually. I'll go through the comments, and I might send out some emails. I might add some bits to the community tab on YouTube. And possibly there'll be a new video or a new stream tomorrow or over the weekend. Okay, thanks so much.